Hello and welcome to the podcast. Imagine a financial planning firm that has been in the same family for 3 generations. One such rare breed of firms is Emery Little, a chartered financial planning firm based in Hertfordshire. And today I am joined by the powerful duo behind this firm. CEO Joe Little and a business partner, Alfie Mullen. Joe, Alfie, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks very much for having us. What an introduction.
Yes, indeed. Let's start with each of you giving us a sense of the journey that has brought you into this wonderful profession of financial planning. Joe, do you want to go first?
Yeah, so I think there's lots that's traditional about my entering the financial planning profession, in that it was accidental, even though I am the third generation of financial advisors or financial planners. Because it was a family business, I think I had always told myself that I definitely wouldn't join. I wanted to spread my wings, do something a little bit different. And growing up, school holidays in the summer and at Christmas and at Easter, I would work for my dad. Back in the day when you had the investment providers come around with their packs of literature, I would be there just stamping. Before there was such a thing as paperless filing, I would, physically file away kind of client correspondence. So I've always kind of been immersed in it. And it wasn't until I graduated in 2010, I did an economics degree. So I kind of wanted to go into finance, but at that time, jobs weren't exactly abundant. And so I had a conversation with Dad, and he said, you know what, do you want to join as a junior power planner? Because I had already had some administrative experience and was already familiar with the business. And he said, just commit 2 years. It means that you can start your exams, and it means it gives the business enough time to, I guess get enough use of me, rather than it just being a fleeting thing. And sort of 2 years came and went. Next thing you know, 5 years came and went, and it's been 13 years. And then just during that period, went through, I guess, a very traditional route of junior power planning, then become a financial planner, kind of getting my chartered exams and going on from there, really. Yeah, I guess that's me in a nutshell, kind of condensing 13 years. I'm not really quite sure what the highlights or the lowlights, but I'm sure we'll get into that as the conversation goes, the more meaty stuff, I guess.
Yeah, so it's fascinating. So I'm assuming, from what I've read, Grandpa he was a financial planner, your dad was a financial planner, and then you definitely said, I am definitely not going to do this. And then you went to uni and studied economics.
Yeah, I know. I don't know. I think I was just kidding myself, really.
Good stuff. So, Alfie, should we come back to you? How did you find your way into this giant profession of ours?
Yeah, I mean, completely by accident. So I'd done six. I was at school. I'd done sixth form. I think I'd always done well at school, but then something sort of when I was just going into sixth form went wrong. Where I guess you just reach a certain age where there are more exciting things in life, And I just kind of not went off the rails, but just sort of stopped caring and just thought, I'm just going to be free and enjoy myself, and hadn't really appreciated all of the work and effort that my parents had put in to kind of make me not be a complete waste of space. But so I kind of didn't really make the uni that I was meant to, and just kind of was a bit of a lost cause. And, I was having a lovely time, but I wasn't really going anywhere. So I found a job in the paper. So I think I was just on the back end of where you found jobs in papers. This was 16 years ago now, and it said financial services administrator, and I was like, that sounds like hell on actual earth. But I went for the interview, got the job, and it was like, I don't know, 20 grand a year, which was 20 grand more than I'd ever had or was ever going to have. So I kind of thought, let's ride. Now, this little company in the middle of nowhere in Hertfordshire called Emery Little gave me that opportunity that I said I just had I didn't know what an ISA was. I didn't even know pensions is. I had no concept at all with it, but it was just okay, this can give me some more money that I can spend at the weekend so I can stop like pouncing off my parents. And little did I know, obviously, that it would be like a pathway to sort of creating, having the journey I've gone on, the career I've had, the impact I've been able to have, and relationships I've created with clients, with the team, with Joe, and to see that we're still only just getting started, kind of in our sort of mid-30s. It's kind of crazy when you think back, really, where it all started and how nonchalant I was about it, and how I just didn't really care, to a point where you sort of now it's just so all-consuming. And it's just funny. I'm sure there's similar stories like that, but I did. Someone asked me the other day, it's like, what's one thing that you do regret? And I definitely sort of not regret, but do wish I had gone to university or had more experiences, and kind of studied properly. But I knew I couldn't have done it then. It's just more now, and I'm a bit maturer and full of more clarity on what life's all about. I think, I wish I had kind of taken a slightly different path to get there. But it was all part of the journey, and feel very grateful that I was able to get through it, really.
What difference would he have made? We have Joe on the one hand, went to uni, grew up in a financial planning firm, around financial planning. You, on the other, didn't go to uni. I don't know the family background, but you didn't care as a teenager. But you ended up in kind of the same place.
Yeah, you're right. I guess that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It was just interesting. It just come to me the other day when someone asked me that. I thought, actually, I wish I had gone, but I don't think it would have worked. All I'd have been is in more debt than I was already in, and
yeah. It's interesting. I mean, this is just a digression. I think that the society is too quick to write people off in their teenage years if, as you said, they go off the rails, and if you look back and you were speaking to the 16, 17-year-old Alfie, what would you tell him?
Yeah, I think that's interesting, actually, because again, like, my parents were like great and have just done it, been amazing for us, me and my brother, our whole lives. And again, I wouldn't now really think of them as the sort of people that would be really quite stressed if their 16-year-old son was like off the boil. But it really felt like that at the time. It was like their world was falling apart because of me, and it seems odd, actually, to think back on it, to think that they were really like that, because they're not really like that. But I guess that's just what happens when I've just got a 4-month-old daughter myself, so I can't imagine I'd be stressy if she wasn't living her best life at 16. But something might change, I don't know. It's an interesting thing. But I think I'd obviously say to him, it's just like, slow down a bit, enjoy it, don't feel the pressure, have more. I'd actually say have more laughs, have more fun, be more stupid, because because the long term is so important, as we know, through just like investing in everything we do. But genuinely, just you got to take your time with stuff, I think, and I think I would have been just less sort of, I felt less pressure to just actually enjoy the moments, rather than kind of wait until I was 30 before I could make a difference, if you see what I mean.
Be more stupid. That's quite an advice for a 16-year-old. Joe, so you're a 30-something-year-old female CEO of a financial planning firm. You're a director of the next gen planners community. How does it feel being different? There aren't many people, in our profession with that type of leadership responsibility. Is it quite demanding? And
Ooh, interesting question. I have never thought about it in that way, to be honest. And that's probably because I don't know any different. I mean, even growing up, we grew up in a very small village in Hertfordshire, went to a predominantly white school, and that kind of environment didn't really change much at university and then at work. And so I've always looked different to the other people in the rooms that I've been in. What I do notice though is when there are more women, more people of colour and younger people, I get disproportionately excited about it. So maybe that's the thing that's telling, because, you know, rightly or wrongly, I sort of automatically find myself drawn towards them just to see if, you know, we have more in common and there's more experiences that we can share, because that is just a part of me, I guess, more broadly, that I just assume, again, it might be an incorrect assumption, that I shouldn't lead with in terms of sharing of experiences, because I just assume it's different, but I don't know. But I wouldn't say I've particularly felt additional pressure because of it. I think I've definitely felt different more because of my age, not necessarily more recently, but kind of earlier on, particularly becoming a director and even sitting in front of clients. I was so keen to kind of get more exams under my belt, because that's what I thought I would need in order to be taken seriously. And also becoming a director or starting new roles where you don't have a huge amount of experience, I think that for me was often a bit of a chip on my shoulder, rather than trying to view the positive parts of it in terms of, you know, there's no baggage, there's you know, naivety sometimes in a good way, in terms of course we can do that, you know, I have no reason and no experience to think why it wouldn't work. And I think I'm trying to tap into that more now. And I am really conscious, being in my position and thinking about, you know, what's the mantra? If you can see it, you can believe it, of, you know, showing hopefully to more people in the profession that it's not such a crazy idea if you're not necessarily, you know, a strong personality, a man or white, and you want to lead a business. Like, it is possible, and you don't necessarily need to think that it is probably still harder, because I'm under no illusions that the kind of family connection definitely made it easier for me, and hopefully that there are more doors opening and more opportunities opening for other people, and that's definitely something that we want to do at Emery Little as well.
You're listening to Retirementals.
Good stuff. So now, tell us a little bit about the firm today. Give us a sense. I like my numbers, you might have told. Give us a sense of the team, the clients, AUM, revenue. Spill the bean. Tell us a little bit about where the firm's at today.
Yeah. So what we got? So we just hired 2 people last week, which brought us to 25 people who are serving 310 million AUM with roughly about 350 client families. It's more like 420, 430 clients, but we kind of do sort of parents and kids kind of into that. So it's a pretty sizable business. I don't think we'd really appreciated that until you start to chat to other people and understand how long it takes to get to that size and how complicated it is and how sort of many challenges there are. But we've got to 25, and our big thing right now is to is that's it. Like, we're not looking to add any more people to it. We just want to now scale through efficiencies and making things slicker and like more operationally getting things right, rather than what we've probably done in the past, which is kind of throw people at situations when they're, when we're stressed or overloaded or facing difficulties. But yeah, they had a high level numbers. Abraham, does that give you? Does that meet the fix?
Yes, absolutely does. Thank you. So give me a sense of the structure. So I'm assuming that we'll come back to this. You know, you, Joe, and um, Dad, you have money to kick him out of the business. Andy are the directors of the business. Sorry, he will be horrified listening to this, or my part of it. Um, um, are the directors of the business, and then you have what, 6 planners, it looks like, and support team. So give me a sense of how what the structure of the people looks like.
Yeah, so there's, as you said, the 3 directors. So Dad he's no longer actually in the business. He is chair. So
Right.
we have monthly.
You managed to kick him out then, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, in the nicest possible way, and I'm sure we'll kind of get into that as the conversation goes on. But he's no longer kind of day to day in the business, but very much still involved, kind of at board level. And he didn't just hand over the keys to the business to us. We are paying our way, as it were. So he will be involved in that capacity for at least another kind of 5 or 6 years until we come good on our deal. So in terms of the structure, we have a leadership team, and there's 4 of us in that leadership team, and it's myself, Alfie, our head of operations, Mel, and our head of technology, Siobhan. And those are actually 2 new appointments. Then we have what are called the team leaders, which are, I guess, they're all management positions. So it's kind of head of the power planning team, head of the admin team, so on and so forth. And there's an additional 5 people there. And then within the business, we've got a power planning team of 4 or 5. We've got an administration team of 3. We've got how many financial planners, Alfie? So yes, so that's 6 full financial planners and 1 associate planner. Then we have kind of a PA team and some centralized business functions, kind of executive support and finance within the business as well.
Incredible stuff. So, sorry, I'm doing the maths on my head. So let's say, 6 planners plus 1 associate, and that's essentially about just less than 3 support staff to 1 planner, or is that 2? Sorry, 25. Yeah, 3 support staff to 1 planner, looks like. Incredible, good stuff. And so I think I was speaking to Marcus about this, who's one of the planners. So I will get this wrong, but basically you have all of the 6 planners under the age of 40 or something like that. And I said in the introduction that you're based in Hertfordshire, but you're not actually, because the planners are working remotely, something of that sort. I'm getting this completely wrong, aren't I?
No, that's pretty much spot on. It's quite a journey. So again, more to get into this, but obviously as we went through the MBO and Andy stepped out, and Joe and I sort of stepped in to the leadership of it, you sort of look around, you look around and we knew there were changes we wanted to make sort of practically with, the investments and the charges and everything. But then there were huge like cultural things that we wanted to change as well. And naturally, I think when any business is taken over, no matter what it is, how big it is, what's going on, there's cultural changes, and therefore there are like personnel changes. And it was nothing personal, but there were lots of things that like needed to change. And we went from, it's quite crazy when I say this to people, I just thought it was normal, but people are like, what? We went from, I think, a team of 5 financial planners that had combined something like 150 years of experience, something crazy like that, to 6 financial planners. And this was about 18 months. So we went from 6 to financial planners with a combined experience of like 22 years. And like 12 of those years were Joe and I. And, 6 each. And so Yeah. When you say that, you're like, yeah. So I am the oldest in the planning team at like 35, which again, just because it just seems normal to us because of how we set it up. But it's only when you talk to others, they're like, what is going on? But I think that the cool thing that we've done, but no, like, so we were totally comfortable with that. We were like, this is the reality. This is where we're at. We've got, like you say, people like Marcus who are just insanely talented and a complete genius, and like so lucky to have him and the other three chaps, particularly on the team, that are just, you know, that have elevated Joe and I to the next level. Like, there's no way. If someone said, "I watch a secret," like like my response is just hire well, because like with those four in particular and the wider team, like, yeah, they have just make us better every time. They're so good. It's like, it's actually a bit embarrassing, but obviously it's a great thing. But I think the thing that we've done really well with that lack of experience is just kind of focused on us together as a team. So the six of us, now seven, will just every single week we meet for, you know, two or three times, and we just sit there and go, right, what's gone on for you this week? How did that difficult client conversation you had go? Like, what went wrong? What could you have done better? And we kind of created this like platform of trust and vulnerability. But then when you then constantly sharing what's gone well, what's gone badly, and what you've done wrong, and if we lost a client, how could we have saved it? Or, you know, working together on big clients or sort of complicated cases. And kind of what that's done in the last 2 years, it's felt like that we haven't just then got 1 year's extra experience each. It's felt like we've got 6 years extra experience each in that 1 year, just through that kind of sort of way of sharing. So I do think like the inexperience just like forced us to do something a bit different, and forced us to be a bit more open and sharing, and has just made us so much better. Like I said already, this elevation. Like, sometimes I just think, well, I'm having conversations with clients now that I was so scared to have 2 years ago. Like, I couldn't have had. I didn't have the skills, the communication, or the confidence. But in this little kind of forum we've created as a planning team, now we're having them as normal, and clients are reacting really well to them. And it's just, yeah. So it's quite a, and so yeah. Basically, the short answer is what you said, Abraham. Is you are right. That is how we've kind of sort of stumbled to set things up. But it so far is working okay.
I am right. I like hearing that. I am right. So the interesting thing from this is that, so Joe, the client stayed. By that I mean, should I be surprised that most of the clients stayed, right? Because so average age of financial advisors client, if you look at, you know, Transact, they publish the figure, AJBell, it's 59, right? And they, surprise, the clients are happy with talking to another 50-something-year-old. And then here comes a bunch of 30-something-year-olds. Tell me what's going on there. Did they stay or not? Oh, clearly they did.
Yeah, so I mean, the vast majority stayed, and actually, we haven't had a single client leave because of the age of the financial planner. So again, you might think we're nuts for having done this, but in a space of 18 months, 2 years, the majority of our clients would have had a new financial planner, in some cases, 2 new financial planners, of whom would have been significantly younger than the previous person they had a relationship with. They would have had a completely new portfolio and investment philosophy introduced to them, like after having had 20, 25 years of like really buying into traditional active management. And we increased our annual fee from 0.75 to 1%. So all in the space of 18 months and 2 years. So as a result of that, naturally we had some clients leave, but actually not that many. And I think the ones that did leave were probably a bit on the cusp anyway. They, you know, and therefore used it as an opportunity to either look after their own investments or do something completely different. And I think in every single case, we parted, you know, on good terms. And there might be one or two in there where we, again, as part of the financial planning team's openness for thinking, well, what could we have done differently there? But I think in the round, we're in a much better place because of it. So yeah, a strong net benefit. And the other thing with the age is, particularly in financial planning, when you're working with people either at crossroads about to retire or actually in their retirement, and we work with them and for multiple generations until they pass away, there is a real benefit to working with someone who is going to be there, like kind of the same person in your 70s, 80s. I distinctly remember, this must have been like 5 or 6 years ago now, I had a client whose accountant retired, and he was furious about it. I was like, Mike, why are you cross? You've just retired. Your accountant is the same age as you. He's allowed to retire. And the benefit of working, with a young team is we're still going to be here for the next 20, 25 years. So again, really using it to our advantage, knowing that the natural preference is for people to want to work with someone who I guess they would view as more experienced or more distinguished. Yeah.
It's a strong marketing. I mean, you alluded to it earlier. It's a strong It should be. I don't know. It should be a strong marketing tool, right? To say, we're planning your retirement, right? We're planning you're a 50-something-year-old, 60-something-year-old. We're planning your retirement. This is going to be a 30-year journey at least, right? 30-year plus journey. I am 30 or 35, right? I have another 30 odd years to go. I'm going to see you through this journey. Oh, by the way, I have been doing it since I was 16. I am chartered. It should be a really, really strong selling point, shouldn't it?
I guess when you put it that way, yes. There's something missing a trick.
I want to unpack the actual MBO, management buyout, and that transition. But Joe, can you take us back? So it was Grandad who set up this business. Talk a little bit about that journey that ultimately led to today, right? You sitting on that chair. So give us a sense of the journey.
Yeah, so Grandad set up Emery Little back in 1971, 1973, one of the two. And he was the little part of the Emery Little, and the Emery part, John Emery, who's unfortunately no longer with us, was an insurance broker, whereas my granddad was a financial advisor, and they, teamed up. They thought they could kind of share clients, and that was based down in Salisbury in Wiltshire, which is sort of near originally where Dad's from, and that was a successful business. And in the meantime, Dad joined one of the big national advice firms. I think there were Godwin's, and then they were taken over by Aon. Is it Aon? Yeah, something like that. And eventually wanted to, leave the kind of the big firm environment and start on his own. And therefore, that's the point at which he kind of joined Grandad's firm, Emery Little. But then after a while, even though he kind of kept the name, he kind of created more of an arm of Emery Little that was kind of based in Hemel Hempstead. And over time, we actually became an independent of the Salisbury business, even though we shared the same name. And he started that sort of 22, 23 years ago now. And in the meantime, so my granddad only recently retired at the age of 85.
Wow.
Yes. exactly. So I think there's lots of lessons to be learnt there. And the biggest one for me is, he said, Joe, retirement is a young man's game. He just left it too late. By the time he thought he was ready to retire, he couldn't play a full 18 rounds of golf in the way that he used to. He couldn't play the sports that he used to love. Lots of his friends had already passed away. And so all of these things that he had assumed that he wanted to do in retirement, he realized that he should have done it, 20 years before. So I think, a lesson in there for all of us. Don't leave it too late, because retirement is a young person's game. So I'm definitely taking that with me. And I think more recently they sold to AFH. I think there was a point at which, obviously Dad and I really wanted to be able to consolidate their business with ours, bring it back into the fold and the family, but just culturally and culturally it was just too difficult to make good, I think. And as much as we would have loved to have done it from a family perspective, I just think it would have it wouldn't have been a success. So we had to make the difficult decision to say, actually, I think it's better if we kind of stayed independent of each other. And then from kind of our Emery Little side of things, I remember becoming a director in 2014, and it was at that point sort of Dad had a conversation with me to say, look, there's absolutely no pressure, and if you want to stay on and see a future here at Emery Little, you're going to need to tell me so that I can adjust my retirement plans, because if you're going off and doing your own thing, which you absolutely are entitled to do, he'll probably grow the business to sell, whereas if I wanted to stay, then he would essentially change his retirement plan. And so I made the decision at that point to stay. It then wasn't the easiest of roads, but the commitment was made at that point. I think I'll leave it there for now.
So talk to us about that point. I mean, Alfie, you can do this, which is, the conversation that's like, all right, now we're now going to buy you out. Was there, an independent valuation? Was there, negotiation back and forth? I'm assuming that you two and some of your team members are the owners of the business now, and you're buying Andy out. I want to know as much as you can share about that conversation.
Yeah. See what I can go with, and then Joe can fill us in. So yeah, I mean, so it's interesting again. Just listening to Joe, then I'm like reminded by it. So 2014 was when like Joe was a director, and things started to move towards, okay, well, what could the future look like? And Joe and I only met Joe obviously when she joined sort of Emery Little formally, and kind of we created this kind of like great friend relationship, but also like healthy kind of pushing each other to be better. And I'd do one exam and Joe would do another one. I'd be like, right, I'm going to do the next one. She'd do the next one, and it was kind of like, and it kind of created it, like I say, like a really healthy relationship that meant pushing each other to be better. But from what happened from sort of between 2014 and 2017, it was like a difficult period because, and I think when, and it must be so hard for Andy, but he was like, right, okay, well, these are the things that so here you go, Joe, you start to take control and take charge. Oh, but you can't change this or that, and and you can't change the investment proposition or the fee structure or the clients or the service. And it's like, so what am I in charge of? And I think, and that obviously led to difficulties. And then it became a point where I think it was like 2017 where Joe and I decided to leave to set up our own firm and go, and we created a firm called ELA, and we tried to this, which was a great lesson, right? We sort of rocked up in this new space thinking that we were young, cool and hip, and that we'd just be able to kind of work with like loads of wealthy young people. and it gave us. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. Like, I found it insane to just rock up in a new place and think that we would just start getting clients because of who we were, or because we thought we were good, or we thought we were nice. It was just like, that's not enough skills, right? You need, in order to just build a business from zero, you need so many different skills. You need to work relentlessly hard. Acquiring clients is the difficult thing. We did the classic thing, which is a total mistake, which when I speak to other people, I always say to avoid, but is we've got a lovely shiny website. We had this really cool office. We had really, really cool like stationery and like really fancy service agreements, but we had no fucking clients, right? So like, you don't need a service agreement when you haven't got anyone who's paying you any money yet. So we learned so much through that process, and Andy was very good because he kind of knew we wanted to try something, and we were an appointed representative of Emery Little as well, so he kind of gave us a bit of time to do that. But when we realized how hard that was, and we realized how, not that Emery Little was struggling, but it wasn't going to move forward without some kind of serious change, and we kind of realized that change was Andy. Like he was in the way of himself and of Joe and of the situation, and from a way that I totally understand, because it was his baby, right? And again, I had a whole newfound respect for him, how he built a business up from nothing to where he did. Although he sort of caught onto his dad's name, Andy built it from scratch in terms of 0 clients to actually 1,000 clients is what he had sort of in 2010, and we had to kind of cut that back. But yeah, what I've realized is that Andy, he had a skill set that like Joe and I didn't have to create that business from nothing to something. But I feel like we had a skill set that enabled us to take the business where it was and take it to the next level. But so yeah, after many difficult conversations and loads going on and loads of complication, we in 2019, I think we kind of got to the point where it was like, look, you either take this red tape off and give us, Joe, full control, or we're going to have to find something else here, because we're just not going to move forward. And again, actually, it's sort of a bit of insight was, it was on like it was in lock. This was 2020 actually, I think, when it finally started to come to its head, and it was on the Friday. We'd given him to like the Friday in July to decide, and I think the news then came in, and he was like, "Look, I understand, but no, I'm not stepping away. I'm not prepared to step away." And we were just like, "Oh no, like this all of this work and all these conversations, and we're not." And understandably now more so from him, he wasn't ready to do that. He wasn't actually ready to do it, and we were just like, "Oh." He kind of called our bluff, because we were like, right, if you don't sign, we're going to have to go, and it's all going to be a nightmare. And but then I don't know what happened. There must have been some heavy old conversations with your poor mum that weekend, Joe, because by the Monday he changed his mind. Literally by the Monday he was like, look, guys, sorry, I made a mistake. It wasn't it, Joe? It was something like that kind of. And so bless him. Yeah, it was. It was, and obviously for Joe and the father-daughter relationship and everything else is like must have been so much more complicated for sure. But actually, from that moment onwards, it was still difficult, but it got easier, and that was when it was okay. I think he then at that moment realised that he couldn't actually just step away, and actually that he couldn't just hand the business over. Like, he needed to be rewarded for his good work, and actually to feel genuinely like it wasn't his. He needed to like financially benefit from that, and rightly so. And actually, that was what started to be the gateway to him, and to getting to where we are now. So he stepped away from client conversations almost immediately. So that was where Joe said that some clients had 2 or 3 financial planners in a quick succession. They were like, one day it was Andy, and then Joe and I stepped in for a bit, and then we've then passed them on to some of the guys that we've now got in the team. So that was kind of where the whirlwind went from. But up until that kind of October 2020 was when we started speaking with the lawyers and really getting to the crux of the MBO, which went through in February. But Joe, you're probably better equipped to like go through the finite details from around that period. Do you want to take that
on? Yeah, so in terms of practicalities, we worked with our accountants and lawyers, obviously, got a valuation of the business, and it was a combination of EBITDA as well as multiple of revenue. And even though it was like a fair valuation, like I definitely got a good deal, right? Because if I can get a good deal, then yeah, it's probably saying something. And once we agreed a valuation, it was very much just, well, then how do we fund it? Like, what is within our individual capabilities? What is within the business's ability? And what works from Dad's own financial planning, and so where we ended up was, I think it was like a 6-year agreement for certain payments to be triggered by certain things, kind of like valuations at one point. And I don't think it's not much more complicated than that. I think what was interesting, and on reflection, I think the 6 years is going to be doable. And we were very punchy at the outset. We were just like, right, this is, there's going to be linear growth. It's, it just looks like Voyant, and every year it's like, 5%, and it's, and we don't have to worry, we don't even have to, no plan B, no plan C. And obviously reality hasn't panned out that way. So I think, just a bit more guidance around that would have been helpful.
It's fascinating, isn't it? That I have come across, this type, this story of, a daughter, more often a son, wanting to take over the business, the financial planning business, and the dad or mom, in this case, the dad, they just love this business. They love doing what they do. And the so-called, financial planners or business people who want to literally die with their boots on, maybe not, but it's more common than you realize. But Joe, to think that you gave him an ultimatum, you what was that? So you said, and then you got mom to obviously get him to change.
I think, I think we were both naive earlier on to think, this is great. It's a family business. We can work together. And in reality, I think this is the case regardless of whether it's a family connection. Like, you need one person in charge. It just, otherwise you're so concerned with the power struggle that's the thing that stalls the business progressing or growing. And even though it's not being done in front of other people, I think the whole team in the business feels it. And so I think unless you have real clarity around decision making and responsibility and accountability, it's the business that suffers. And I think we both realized that. And when I gave, it sounds so harsh, but I guess essentially it was an ultimatum. Like, that was for both of us, setting the family dynamic aside and saying, well, what the business needs is one person in charge. It sort of doesn't matter who it is. If it was him or me, the future would have been bright. It would have just been different. But a choice needed to be made. And I do, I massively sympathise and kind of empathise with how hard it is to let go of something that not only have you built, and there's so much of your personality in it, but if and I think a lot of us attach some of our value to our work, and that's there's a grieving process that has to be done as a result of it. And even now, when I think, I know I'm going to have to move on from Emery Little before I'm ready, and just the thought of that is already quite stressful. And I'm really determined to make good on that. I have no idea what that looks like, but it's trying to learn from what's gone before me, knowing that it is, otherwise it's particularly difficult for the next generation.
Guys, I want to be respectful of your time, so I'm going to try and draw this to conclusions. Look, thank you very much. I am grateful, and I'm sure our listeners are, for just your forthrightness, your honesty, about these difficult conversations, and the journey that you've been on. Um, and as you said, this is entirely about recognizing and respecting, right, the the value and the hard work of your dad, and the incredible achievement. And that's very difficult, but you've done it. So what you described there sounded like, the financing aspect sounded like an owner's finance, or some sort of owner's finance. So it's your dad, financing that transition, and you're going to pay him over, a period of time from the dividends of the business. That makes sense to me. The question in my mind was, did you consider sort of, outside financing? I had a conversation with Gretchen, Magenta, who've financed our own buyout with with a company called Vatos Capital. And again, I had Matt Marias on podcast, talk through the mechanics of that. Did that sort of thing cross your mind, or you didn't have to, because Andy was prepared to offer that sort of financing?
Yeah, so I think if we were dealing with a much shorter time frame, which I guess most people are when they're looking to exit their business, if they're looking at 2 to 3 years, or certainly anything less than 5, then we would have needed to get external financing. But because we were so lucky that Dad was, accommodating to have as long as a 6-year buyout period, it sort of meant that was just way more affordable, and therefore we didn't have to take on additional lending. Like, we did take on some lending from the bank, because it was obviously a much cheaper rate than someone like Vertus, I'm assuming. And yeah, we were kind of keen not to take on too much expensive debt to then make it kind of harder for us. But I think the time frame was the biggest blessing for us, really.
Incredible stuff. So you guys today, I'm approximating here, right? You are 320, 350 AUM. That tells me probably between 3 to 4 million pounds of annual revenue run rate. Correct me if I'm wrong. What is it you're building? You fired, not fired, but you brought in new planners. You hired your team. You've actually got in your hands the seeds of something, something beautiful. I mean, it is something beautiful now, something that could be much, much bigger and greater. What is it that you're trying to build out of this?
Yeah, I think it's funny, actually. We had a conversation when the takeover was going through where it was kind of, right, I think Joe was kind of like, yeah, well, I think I just want this to be a lifestyle business. And, and I was like, yeah, I can get on board with that. Like, we'll have, a nice life, play golf, and, yeah, and see where life takes us. But, and again, I kind of hadn't really given myself permission to think anything differently. But I think I probably was thinking more of like, well, what could we do? What could we do? But then Joe just came in literally one day, and she was like, yeah, my previous plans aren't really what I want to do. Like, that's not going to get me out of bed in the morning. It was almost like the freedom of this kind of deal being behind us. And actually, I think as Joe really became comfortable with like her role and, how great she is and could be, she was like, yeah, let's take over the world. And I was like, now we're talking. So, yeah, we talk a lot about being as a firm. So our mission, if you like, is to look, feel, and act like the best financial planning firm in the world, so that our clients and our team get a better deal at Emery Little than they do anywhere else. And I think the emphasis for us there is in the world. And we spent, like, it was about 2021. I was just constantly saying to everyone in the team, like, world class. What's world class? What's the best in the world? Everyone just thought I was mad. But now everyone's talking like that, like it's become normal. Like this kind of concept of being world class or the best in the world is something that we're looking to achieve in everything we do. And obviously we're miles off, and no one knows what it really looks like. But that doesn't matter because it gives you something just to constantly work towards. And yeah, our short term plan in the next sort of 3 years is to try and get to 600 mil, and then get to 1 billion. And I don't always love the fact that you use the AUM as the figure to, you know, to a sort of, but it is a clear and obvious objective. So yeah, we want to scale, we want to be the best in the world, and we want to have a greater impact. You know, that's the cool thing that we're looking to do. And like as I say, we've got a really, really super talented team, a lot of potential, and a bit of a couple of decades to hopefully, you know, to sort of like go at it. So who knows where we'll end up? I get really lost in, you know, thinking we're going to do this all in, you know, in the next couple of years. Joe's a bit more realistic, and I think the balance is good. But yeah, it's exciting for us for sure, and you know, and I think we're also pretty happy if you only get halfway there or a quarter of the way there, whatever. Like it's all about the journey, right? So yeah, we've got big ambitious plans, whilst maintaining our culture and not compromising on the quality of the service we provide, which is, you know, like expert financial planning with high net worth clients that we you know, we want to change their lives and make them better. So Joe, would you add anything to that?
I mean, I think that's a pretty good sell there, Alfie.
I honestly think that you can do it. I mean, look, call me, you know, what is the word, a capitalist for using AUM as agent. It's not the only thing, right? But it tells me so much about firms. You know, I can infer revenue, I can infer, it will not, I'm not looking for precision, right? You know, I can infer ambition from that sort of conversation. And I think you guys can absolutely do it. This business is, you know, in my experience talking to, I mean, I haven't run a financial planning business, but I've talked to so many financial planners. It's ultimately a game of patience, hard work, and, you know, if you stay long at it enough, you know, if you stay at it long enough with the right vision and you know, and drive. And if anybody has shown that, it's definitely you two sitting in front of me. So I am, one thing I forgot to ask you, sorry, this is poor interview skills, by the way. But one thing I forgot to ask you is, why did you think that your first iteration of this, i.e. Ella, why did you think it didn't work? You know, and sorry, thank you for being so honest and vulnerable about that. You know, we all like to sing praises about our successes, not so much about the non-success. I hate the phrase failure. So why didn't it work? Why do you think it didn't work?
Yeah, I mean, Alfie can obviously answer this after me. So I think on reflection, if you are looking to start a business from the ground up, the most important skill, I think, is the ability to attract and acquire new clients. And in order to do that, you have to have a certain level of confidence. You need to really be able to sell yourself. And I think that, particularly for me and Alfie at the outset, were just ill-equipped to do. Like, we thought, you know, we're actually pretty good financial planners in a well-established company. We're just going to take our same personality, our same selves into a completely new environment, and we're still going to thrive. And that just isn't the case. And I know for me, my skill set is much more around growing an existing team and growing an existing business and dealing with change, whereas, you know, the entrepreneurial spirit needed to start a business just is not my bag. And I think in that period, it's, just realizing that and being totally okay with it, because we can't be all things to all people. And it was a painful lesson and really hit the ego hard. But I think time has healed that particular wound. Alfie, what would you say?
Yeah, much the same. It was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And and you've kind of made a big song and dance over it. You've got a lot of people involved, and you do feel like a failure, right? But I think what I agree with Joe. I think our skill set was and has been proven to be better at working with people, established business, or kind of getting the best out of people in the team, or and communicating with clients that have already got a level of trust and understanding with you. So that was just kind of why, if people ask how would you do differently, what would you do differently, I genuinely think actually if you're entrepreneurial spirited, if you're not entrepreneurial spirited but you do want to have your own thing or do something yourself, then I think you're better off trying to find a firm that is aligned in your values, sees financial planning in the way that you see it, and trying to work through to a path to have ownership or leadership kind of in that business. I think that is actually a more rewarding and a more successful chance of that working. And for those who just go out and do it on their own and make a thing of it, the Andy Hart, Sam Slomers, these guys like that, like nothing but mad respect to those kind of people I look up to, because it's just so hard. And I think actually the conditions of the financial services today are even harder. With sort of all of the regulation and everything. But I'm not blaming that at all. I wasn't skilled enough or well equipped. But everything, what we did do is we knew that as time went on, so we invested in ourselves. I did all sorts of training and courses and everything I could to try and make myself better, and that has now helped now. So it's all part of the journey. I think we had to go through that to firstly be knocked down a peg or two, and then secondly to realize that you need to invest in yourself to be the best version of yourself, to be the best version of whatever you want to do in the future. And I do think that's worked out, which is why we're kind of happy to laugh about it now. But yeah, it wasn't straightforward, and the ego definitely took a bashing, but we are where we are.
Incredible stuff. Thank you both for being honest and vulnerable, and thank you for sharing. This is why I love this profession. Do you guys have any parting words? There is so much I wanted to talk to you about. I have enjoyed the conversation so much, but all good things must unfortunately come to an end, at least for now. Any parting words? Anything that you guys wanted to share with our listeners?
For me, and this is kind of demonstrated when we did a talk on kind of succession at the PFS, is how many people came up to us afterwards saying, oh, we're going through a similar thing, do you have any advice? And I would just say that if any part of this conversation has resonated with you and you just want to hear more about our story, or more about all of the terrible things that didn't go to plan, then by all means reach out. More than happy to share as much as we can to kind of help others, because I think it's a generational thing at the moment. There's lots of financial planning business owners looking to exit, but having to deal with all the emotional difficulties that brings, and there's a whole new generation of people trying to get their foot into that ownership door and not really just knowing how to do that. So reach out, I would say. Alfie?
I would say you sort of mentioned it then, Abraham, but I think the crux of some of the success we've had more recently has been just being truly honest. And I think in order to be truly honest, you need to be completely vulnerable. To me, it took me a long journey to get to that point. I think I spent my 20s covering up who I really was or what I really thought, and you kind of get caught in a sort of web of lies and insecurities. Whereas actually, when you get to a point where you're just comfortable with everything as it is, things start to change. Trust shifts, and so does your luck. So that's something I always reflect on, and just have loads of fun and have a laugh, because it's not really worth it otherwise.
Oh, I would just add, if you can find others to do it with, I think it adds to the fun.
Defo.
Joe Little, Alfie Molan, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for your honesty. Thank you for your wisdom. And thank you for sharing your story. Thank you.
Thank you, Abraham. Appreciate it, mate.
Thanks.
I'll be remiss if I don't thank my incredible team who worked very hard to put this program together. Thank you very much, guys. I'd like to thank our sponsors, Timeline Retirement Planning Software and High-Tech Low-Cost Flat Fee Model Portfolio Manager. And to you, our listeners, thank you for your time. I hope you've had as much fun listening to the program as we have making it. You can find more about the show at retirementals.co.uk, and you can follow me on Twitter. My handle is Abraham on Money. Until next time, thank you.